I'm Arian Mousakhan, and today I will present my work on anomaly detection with conditioned denoising diffusion models. So a bit about myself. As I said, I'm Arian. I'm a PhD student in computer vision lab at the University of Freiburg, and my PhD topic is world model, mostly concerned about driving scenarios, and hence I'm also really interested in generative models and representation learning. However, today I will present about anomaly detection. So initially, I want to define anomaly detection, and the definition I found on Wikipedia is that in data analysis, anomaly detection is generally understood to be the identification of rare items, events, or observations which deviate significantly from the majority of the data and do not conform to a well-defined notion of normal behavior. However, nowadays I can argue this significantly term is not correct now. Slight deviation sometimes should be also identified as anomaly. So anomaly detection can be applied in many cases such as finance, such as medicine, in statistics. However, here we are mostly concerned about visual anomaly detection and also more specifically in industrial cases. So the definition we introduced or put in our paper is visual anomaly detection involves the identification and localization of instances in data that are inconsistent with normal observation. For example, in the first row of these three tables, we have these three figures. We have normal samples, and in the second row, we can see there are bent wires or scratches or some part of the object is poked or there's a leakage or any sort of anomalies, you can just name it. And first we are going to go through the common approaches. So how people try to identify anomalies based on unsupervised visual anomaly detection. And I would say unsupervised because in most cases we don't have a full range of anomalies, so we cannot make a binary classification during the training. So usually we are only concerned or we are limited to our training data set, which is only nominal samples and good samples. So usually people approach unsupervised anomaly detection via representation models or reconstruction-based models. So just as a general picture, usually in representation-based models, they use a pre-trained feature extractor. It could be a ResNet, for example, pre-trained on ImageNet, and we know this sort of feature extractor or this sort of pre-trained models are able to extract meaningful features. And we go through our training data set, extract the features, and somehow there are different approaches. There are many models out there. They try to learn this representation. So this learned representation is only based on the normal behavior or the normality definition which comes from our training data set. And during inference, we have like an anomalous image or faulty input. And then again, we try to extract features from our anomalous image. And you can see here, there is a hole in the hazelnut, which is not seen during the training. So this feature, which is extracted from this region of the image, is not going to align with our learned representation. So this mismatch results in the anomaly identification, and hence we can segment and localize and then detect the object as anomalous. On the other side, we have reconstruction-based models, which is also the interest of this paper we introduced. So during the training, we only have training data set similar to the representation-based models. So here, instead of using a pre-trained feature extractor, we directly train a generative model to learn the representation of the training data set. And then we leverage our trained generative model to reconstruct our input image. Here, the assumption is that as the generative model is not trained to generate this hole, it is unable to generate or restore this hole in our reconstruction. And therefore, the reconstruction error is identified as anomalous, or like a heat map, which you can locate and segment the anomalous part, and thus detecting the object as anomaly. So before our publication, we knew that reconstruction-based models back then are not really competitive with representation-based models, and in some cases having an estimation of the reconstructed of anomalies would be nice to have. Therefore, we try to identify the challenges or the failure cases in reconstruction-based models. So based on my experiment, I could say there are three main challenges. The first one is we want to remove the anomalous region in the input image, which is this part. So this part should be removed and should be completely waved and be reconstructed in a normal way. At the same time, we also want to preserve the normal pattern of during reconstruction, because if we do not reconstruct the normal pattern and then there is going to be also a deviation in the normal pattern, then this deviation based on the definition of anomaly should be also considered as anomaly and all of distribution, which is not our aim here. And the third challenge is that once we have the reconstruction, we also want to make a robust and fair comparison between reconstructed and original input image. So we identify the challenges and then we try to tackle them one by one. And this identifying and trying to resolve these challenges brought us this anomaly detection with conditioned denoising diffusion paper, which is a GCPR 2024 paper. You can find the paper on arXiv, and also the GitHub repo is available for further research. And I have to say this paper was not achievable without the effort of Jawad Tayyub, which I was doing my master thesis with Jawad Tayyub, and also Thomas Braggs, who is my current PhD supervisor. So before going to, as you already understood, we use denoising diffusion models. So let's a bit study about the denoising diffusion models. So as you know, right now, there's a huge research on denoising diffusion models. There are different forms of formulation, and there are many papers, fancy papers with lots of mathematical formulation. However, we here only touch on those formulation we need for our paper and our aim. So simply put, in diffusion model, we add noise and then we try to denoise it. But how we achieve that? So we have forward process. In forward process, we sample a noise. It could be from Gaussian distribution, for instance, and then we try to crop our input image and then get into the perturbed or cropped image at time step t. And what we want to do, we also want to reverse the process. We want to go from more noisy image to the less noisy image. However, this process is intractable. Therefore, we try to train a unit or any sort of models which gives us a predicted noise, which predict the noise which is used in the XC at time step t. And then during the training, we have a sampled noise from the Gaussian distribution, for example, and then we try to see how much the estimation of our neural network from this noise, which comes from xt, is accurate. And then we can train our own model. And once this once this model can estimate the noise correctly, we can gradually predict the noise at each time step and then denoise it gradually. So this becomes the whole term we need. However, we also look into denoising diffusion implicit models, which is DDIM, and the sampling process is kind of extremely used nowadays. So what they say, usually the assumption in the DDPM is that we try to add noise gradually, and then this is a Markovian chain, and we always need to denoise it step by step. For example, if we have 1,000 steps, then during the noising, we should also go all the 1,000 steps. But the DDIM argues that we kind of, during the training, we go from xt, we go to xt from x0 directly in one step. Therefore, we can also do it in one step and estimate the noise free of the image from xt. And it achieves us a new sampling process. So we calculate the noise-free image from xt, and then we use it to kind of denoise it one step. And then it makes it non-Markovian, and we are not limited to go through all the 1,000 steps. So we can also denoise it with the fewer steps than the training process. And then we also have a definition called a score function. So once we have a trained model that predicts a noise, we can calculate the noise at time step t, and there is a ratio of noise we try to deduct from our noisy image from our xt, and it says you should kind of nudge the image a bit in this direction. So basically the noise defines the direction, and this term, alpha terms, shows how much should we nudge the image toward the less noise. And this is called a score function. So if you remember, I said we have two challenges in anomaly detection. The first part is that we don't want to generate samples. We don't want to generate, for example, any object, though we want to exactly generate the same object. And we also want to reconstruct or remove the anomalous part and also preserve the normal pattern. So what we do, instead of using a score function, we use a conditional score function. So we condition it on y, which could be any image. In our case, it's going to be the anomalous input image. And then we try to a bit modify the sampling process, which becomes interesting for our project. So once we have this conditional score function, we can use the Bayesian rule and then decompose it to two different terms. The first one, again, is the unconditional score function, which we saw in the previous slide. And then we also have this likelihood score function. So we try to write one by one, step by step, to see what we can achieve from this formulation. For sure, we don't have this part. So this part is a question mark. However, we have the score function based on the diffusion model, and we also have a conditional score function. However, here the noise is different from the predicted noise from unconditional, because this noise, which shows the direction we should move at each time step, now is conditioned on y. So now we have two terms should be resolved. So first we look into our condition in the score function, our conditional score function. So if we try to condition xt based on y, it's a bit challenging because xt and y are not from the same signal to noise ratio. So what we do, instead of conditioning on y, we condition on yt. So it's easier because now xt and yt are on the same signal to noise ratio. However, in order to achieve yt, we do not sample from the Gaussian noise. The trick we use, we try to add the noise predicted by our model from xt. And once we add the predicted noise from our model to y0 and we achieve yt, so the assumption here is that yt and xt are consist of the same signal, the same noise, and they only deviate in the signal part. So now we can kind of write our likelihood score function, and here you can kind of interpret this score function, how we should deviate from xt to achieve yt. And then we can just formulate it as yt minus xt, as they are consist of the same noise and the same signal to noise ratio. And now once we have this likelihood score function, we can just plug in the defined terms in our in the formulation we had here previously, and then we can kind of reach out to the new noise. So the new noise could be calculated based on this term. And then we can plug in the calculated or new noise to our sampling process and jump from xt to xt minus 1, and right now we know this sampling process is conditioned. So maybe there are two mathematical properties right now. A bit to make it simpler, I also made a visualization of our framework, which make it easier to understand. So we have xt, and then we also have the calculated or estimated noise at time step xt, right? So this comes from the diffusion model. We have it easily based on the trained model. And what we do, we also have input image, which could be the same faulty input image or any input image in our case. And then we add the estimated noise by diffusion model to y, and then we receive yt. And now we have YT and XT, and then we try to see how much they differ from each other. And we know if the signal or the prediction is correct, basically they should not deviate a lot. And then we can see the deviation here. So it is visually depicted. And you can see basically our diffusion model is unable to predict the noise correctly in the anomalous part. As you can see here, here is the input image, and this part is out of distribution or anomalous, and this part, the red dots are also out of distribution. And you can see the reconstruction rate on this part are kind of huge. And in the bottom, you can also see the F, which calculates the estimation of noise-free image at time step t. So I hope this framework helps you to understand the whole conditioning mechanism more conveniently. So the other trick we use, instead of we start from the full noise, we start from a signal to noise ratio. As we have the input image, we are not obligated to start from time step 1000. We can just start from time step 200. And it has two advantages, because it can some sort of conditioning, because there is a signal ratio in our noisy image. For example, here you can see the object is still visible. And also it accelerates the sampling process. If you start from time step 200 from 1000, it's per se 5 times acceleration in our sampling. And here you can also see the algorithm. So the nice thing about our conditioning is that it only requires few lines of codes or few lines of mathematical properties, and it could be simply added to any diffusion model framework, and it doesn't require any additional training. So that's one advantage of our training data set, of our conditioning mechanism. So we also have this W term defined here. This W term basically defines the strength of our conditioning. So as you can see, if we have the input image, W equals to 0 means we don't have any conditioning. And as you can see here, the reconstruction or the denoising process caused a huge deviation from our input image. However, if we increase the W, meaning that we increase the temperature of the conditioning, we get very more similar image to the input image. And we can kind of fine-tune or play around this W parameter to get more closer image to our input image, or we want to deviate completely from the input image. And it can kind of be useful if we are dealing with a tiny anomalies, or we are facing with huge anomalies. And here is also, again, a general picture of our framework, which we have the input image, we add noise, and then we condition it to our denoising process, and then you get the image which is really resemble our input image, and only the anomalous part is reconstructed. So far we talked about our denoising process and then how we reconstruct our input image. And now we also want to have a robust comparison. So we have reconstructed, we also have our input. So how we compare them, we use both pixel-wise and also feature-wise comparison, because sometimes maybe the part is point and it's not really visible based on the RGB. However, you can use a feature extractor and then you can find anomalies or deviation based on the features better. And sometimes just having RGB, for example, if there is a color change, sometimes features are not really robust. However, RGB is completely robust. So we use a pixel-wise and feature-wise comparison. So one problem we had with the feature extractor, they are trained on ImageNet and they are not robust, or they are not domain adapted to the domain at hand. So what we do, we kind of introduce a domain adaptation using our conditioning mechanism. So what we do, we have our diffusion model trained on, for example, hazelnut in this case. We have input image X, and then we also sample a second image, which is our conditioning image Y0. So we kind of sample two images from our training data set, and then what we do, we add noise to the first image, and then we condition the diffusion process, the denoising process or reconstruction process on the second image. And as we said, our denoising is conditioned on the second image. So it tries to denoise it. So it tries to resemble the reconstruction to be similar to our second or conditioned image. Hence, we get a second image, which is kind of similar to the conditioning image. And then we use a feature extractor to kind of becomes agnostic to the feature distance between these two images. And therefore, our feature extractor firstly trained to learn the features of the hazelnut. And the second part, or the second advantage, is that it also becomes resilient to the nominal changes or very similar changes which we could get from our reconstruction in our normal setting, not in an anomalous setting. Or it becomes robust to the normal deviations. And then we go step by step to see how much these contributions affected using a naive diffusion model. So as you can see, our conditioning in the image level almost increased 7% of the image AURC and almost 4% in pixel level AURC, and also Pro is based on the pixel level. As you can see, there is a boost here. And also, if we only try to use feature extractor, you can see our domain adaptation mechanism also gives a boost in the feature level comparison. And once we have the feature level comparison and the pixel level comparison, you can see we achieve really high and accurate numbers in anomaly detection in both image AURC and pixel AURC and Pro. And Pro is also for segmentation instead of the pixel AURC, which tries to classify each pixel one by one. Pro try to do segmentation, try to evaluate our segmentation per region, which could be a bit more robust. And here you can see also some quantitative results. So on the left side, we have our different categories on MVTech. So MVTech has 15 categories, and we have evaluated per category separately. And in the average, you can see our method DDAD 10, and 10 here refers to the 10 denoising steps. So we only need 10 denoising steps to get anomaly-free image, could achieve a state-of-the-art result on image detection, and also in the image segmentation after DiffAD, it placed the second place. And we also benchmark on the Visa dataset. On Visa dataset, which has 12 categories, we compared against the state-of-the-art models, and we could also achieve a state-of-the-art results. One thing I forgot to point, nowadays another framework is using foundation models, visual language models, and they only try to define the normality and abnormality based on the prompting, like text prompting. And there are many models out there nowadays, including WinClip. I guess WinClip was the first of them, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, just to distinguish between the unsupervised and the zero shot, they are not trained at all. So they use foundation models knowledge for anomaly detection and segmentation. And there are also some qualitative results. You can see the anomalies are reconstructed, and hence they are segmented. And here we also have the ground truth, so you can compare the ground truth with the estimated heat map. And also we have the input image and then reconstructed image, so you can see the quality of their reconstruction. So nowadays mostly there are benchmark on Visa and MVTech, mostly MVTech, but we also try to evaluate or benchmark on method on very different dataset, which called MTD. It's a magnetic tile dataset. And we could see even on really different data sets, such as magnetic tile, our framework achieves to get a state-of-the-art results. So there are many references here and also more in the paper, and I really thank the audience for listening, and I hope it grabbed your attention.